Welcome to the Networking with Michelle podcast, the show dedicated on providing you the how-tos of marketing and networking strategies. Here we believe in the Jim Rohn quote, success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. Hey everyone, welcome back to a new episode of Networking with Michelle. I'm your host, Michelle Gomez. This episode right here is probably top 5. I want to say top 3, but I'm probably like lying and cheating myself and maybe another guest. But I truly believe this has to be one of my top episodes. And I could be biased. I could very well be biased because I am the host and unfortunately my name is on the show. But look, today's guest, Leigh Martinuzzi, aka the Hidden Why Guy. Like these are the conversations I want to have, and because I'm always in my head, and whether this is one-on-one with a friend or even podcast guest, like this is the type of conversations I want to have, I love to have. And we talked about how do we identify and acknowledge these pivotal moments in our life, right? What is the relationship between happiness and success? And look, I could go on and on and on, but I'm telling you, this is one of the episodes that are going to make you think about your life. And then we eventually pivot and we talk about business, how to be efficient in your business when it comes to outsourcing and things of that nature. But we spend a lot of time really unraveling happiness and self-awareness because I love that stuff. And yeah, this is just a great episode in my opinion, and I hope you enjoy it. So remember, Line 25 sponsoring this episode, helping you entrepreneurs develop your personal brand by leveraging relationships and your expertise. You got to be expert, right? So be sure to check out line25consulting.com. That's line25consulting.com. So look, you are in for a treat. So strap up, get your pen and paper ready, and listen to this great conversation with Leigh Martinuzzi. Hey everyone, welcome to a new episode of Networking with Michelle. Today's special guest is Leigh Martinuzzi. He is the Hidden Why Guy, an expert in lifestyle and business design. Leigh, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
Michelle, I am fantastic. Thank you for having me on.
Absolutely. So we're going to jump right in.
Cool.
Of course, a couple of years, maybe 3 to 4 years, Simon Sinek has blown up with the whole start with why concept. And that looks like, what's your why? That's the trendy thing to say or question now. And my question to you is, do we need to identify our why in order for us to experience happiness and success in life?
I believe so, absolutely.
Why?
That's the question. Look, I found myself, and it's my own personal journey, and the reason why I've created a roadmap essentially called the Ultimate Life Map, which I'm working on at the moment to write it into a book form. And I believe if you don't have a good connection and awareness of your why and a well-defined why, your action and your behaviors will be less conducive to bringing you towards this deeper state of happiness. And I believe there's 2 parts of that state as well, which is freedom and fulfillment. And if you have both of those ticked off, you're going to reach a deeper level of happiness. If you are not connected with your why, you tend to meander more in life. You tend to act with less purpose and intent. And certainly that's where I found myself. I finished school and then was lost. You get sort of thrown into the deep end, sink or swim. And I don't mind sink or swim. I think it's a good idea. And certainly it's helped me in a lot of previous roles that I've had to learn very quickly. But in life, it can be a bit overwhelming and daunting. And life is about taking your own journey and really enjoying that process. But I think because it's so overwhelming when we first are released into the wild, a lot of us try to find that comfort back again because we need that security, you know. Too much uncertainty is a bad thing, but not enough is also a bad thing. And Tony Robbins, you know, talks about certainty and uncertainty in some detail. But I think getting thrown out into the real world, we have that high level of uncertainty, which is exciting. There's variety, but what do we do? I mean, at that age, I had no idea, and I think a lot of the people that I connect with didn't either. So we try and find that security, and to do that, we follow the path of the status quo, the maps that society have written out for us, so we can just jump on it. It provides us comfort. You know, it might be going to university, getting a job, a trade, whatever it might be, and that just gives us that sense of security, and we follow that. And as we follow that, we disconnect with our true why. And our why is really, I've got a created intellectual property which I call life compass, and that's defining your why. So it's got 4 elements. It's desires and your passions. Your dreams and your passions, your desires, needs, your talents and skills, and your core values. So all those elements, if you really can connect with them, they sort of form your why. And with that in mind, you can take more purposeful action in certain aspects of life that will help you get towards that level of happiness. If you don't have that connection, which most of us don't, because we follow those paths that society set out for us, we just disconnect from that, and suddenly we're just existing without any great purpose. You know, it's the cause of a lot of our suffering in life, I believe. And if you look at some of the stats that are out there saying, and you know, people have read these stats, I'm sure, but the stats say that 80% of the workforce are dissatisfied with their job. Now, if you're working 40 hours a week, that's a big part of your life that's filled with dissatisfaction. Certainly that wasn't what I wanted in life. And I've always been I'm an impatient person. I'm very time conscious, and I want to make the best of this life. And I've always had that sort of at the back of me. So I've always just not accepted things for they are. I wanted to ask bigger questions, and certainly that's what led me down this path. I was working in the corporate arena, and things, you know, were great. I had everything to be grateful for. I had a wife. I had a Toyota Land Cruiser. I always wanted one of those cars. You know, we had 3 investment properties. We had money rolling in. It was a good life, but I just felt empty. I felt that there was more, and that's because I wasn't following my why. Now, Stephen Covey, in his book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he talks about, you know, creating a personal mission statement. And I believe that's essentially what a why becomes. It becomes your mission statement in life so that you can act purposefully towards, you know, the life that you want to live. And certainly on these paths that society set out for us, they're not necessarily bad paths. I don't think they're right or wrong, really, but they typically aren't your journey. They're someone else's journey that's given to you. And when you walk that path that's not your own journey, it's not as enjoyable. It's not as fun. So how are you going to reach that level of happiness? I wrote this yesterday. Sorry, I'll wrap it up. But I wrote this yesterday. I was thinking, if you were told to, you know, climb a mountain that you didn't want to climb, or you had the choice of climbing your own mountain, which would you get a deeper sense of satisfaction out of? And I mean, if your audience asked that question to themselves now, they'd probably say, well, it's the one that I'd obviously want to climb. And it's so true. Like when you get said, here, climb this mountain, and you don't really want to climb it, the challenges and obstacles you face, because on both climbs you'll face them, but the one that you get told to climb, you're not going to enjoy as much because you'll just be sort of having this poor attitude from the start anyway. And it won't be the same sort of result. And you'll either rush up that mountain trying to get to the top to get it over and done with, and, you know, being disgruntled with all the obstacles and challenges you face along the way. And you'll probably look back with some level of regret and remorse about the trip and going, hey, what just happened? And, you know, that's what happens to life. It just passes us by like that. But climb the mountain that you want to climb, you're likely to take it a little bit more slowly. You're likely to enjoy those challenges and obstacles with a little bit more glee. And once you get to the top, you'll probably look back with less regret because it's a journey that you wanted to take. And that's what life is like. And for me, the biggest fear is not to look back at life and go, geez, I really regret that experience. You know, I don't want to have to look back with regret. And yeah, there's going to be regret in everyone's lives, but I don't want to have that big regret of saying, geez, I wish I did that. Now, I don't know if you're aware of Bronnie Ware's book. She wrote a book called Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And the top regret that she discovered of the dying people was that they didn't live a life true to themselves. They live a life that everyone else expected of them. And that's what happens when you follow these maps that society sets out for us. You start following everyone else's expectation and not your own, and that's the disconnect from your why. So absolutely, I think we need to have a why. I don't think it's all that easy to find. It's not like finding a lost set of car keys around the house. It takes a little bit more work, but yeah, with the work done and the definition of your life compass, you can certainly have greater purpose in life.
Now, you mentioned college, going to school at the university level, and that's pretty much our early stages for adulthood. Like, how soon can we learn, understand, comprehend, act out on this why? Because I don't think it's anything that's taught. Well, I think now it's becoming taught, but I don't know. It's like you said, though. It's like we're going through the motions of this path. And I knew I was going to college because my parents went to college and I had nothing to compare it to. I didn't have that second mountain to compare it to. So, how early is it the parents that should be responsible of cultivating a why for their children?
Yeah, look, I think there's shifting generations now, and my parents weren't to blame. They did what they thought was best for children, and that was to go to university. They thought, well, rather than working, the what do you call it, the process work or whatever. If you the higher education, the better your job you're going to get. The more money you're going to make, the easier life will be. So that's the premise behind that. But that model's shifting now, and we can see that. There's less and less of those jobs that are long term, and more entrepreneurial sort of roles now. So I think that's part to do with the shift. And yeah, I think it is up to our parents. I hope I can be a role model for my children. I've got two girls, a 2-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I really want to encourage them to walk their own path and follow their passions and act with more purpose in life, doing what they want to do, because I think life's too short, damn it, and we want to make the most of it. So yeah, I'd like to be the role model for that in their lives. But certainly I believe our education could teach us a lot more. I feel like, elementary education's great. They teach us the motor skills that we need, basic math, arithmetic, all that sort of stuff. But in high school, there's a lot of good points about high school. Don't get me wrong. It's different in each country, I'm sure. But for me, I feel that there was a lack of encouraging, students to be themselves. And it was more a process of, hey, let's try and mold these kids into a template. So once we let them go, they're going to fit in easier. And I think that is where our disconnect starts. That's where we start covering up our authentic self. And so, yeah, I think there could be a lot more work done there and a lot more preparation too, to say, hey, this is what you can expect out there, and this is how you can deal with it. Like I know they're bringing mindfulness into schools over in America now, at least. And I think that's great. Those sort of tools are fantastic. And I believe if we can start, working on our why and figuring that out earlier, we're going to have less suffering in the interim as we figure out, because your why does evolve. It evolves with experience, and experience brings added value to who you are and what's important to you. It brings new dreams and desires and passions. So certainly your why will evolve. But for me, I went to college. I actually finished school. I went to college. I dropped out of college. I went and started a chef apprentice. I finished that. I didn't complete it, but I just dropped out of that and I started to cook. And then, because I've always had a passion for cooking, and then that wasn't really right for me. So I went to my dad and said, what am I going to do now? I think I'm going to go back to university. And I sort of felt like I was wasting time. And he said, no, it's all good experience, so don't worry about it. So, it was good advice from my dad. I said, okay, cool. So I went back to university and finished that. And I think I went back to university because it seemed like the easier path at the time, and it was a heck of a lot of fun. And it's because I just didn't know, I didn't know where I wanted to go. And I wish I had more of that support. And, it's not, again, my parents, it wasn't a lack of their support. It was just, who knows? I mean, who knew about this sort of stuff? But now I think it's essential that we sort of sit down with people and say, okay, well, what's important to you? What do you value? What do you really dream about? What are your passions? What are you good at? And our childhood leaves us clues for most of this stuff. You can ask your questions about, a great question that I heard recently that I thought was just powerful is, what's your first childhood memory? Can I ask you that question, Michelle? What's your first childhood memory? It's a hard one.
Yeah. Lord. I don't even know if it's a true memory or if it's pictures, right?
What's the first thing that comes to mind?
I'm thinking about celebrating my first, just celebrating a birthday, walking around with my mom's dress shoes on and my hands in cake.
So it probably, and I was asked this question, and the memory that I have that seems to be the earliest anyway, and again, who would know, but I was walking with a bunch of kids in kindergarten down this like little track going to, I think it was a park in the middle of, I came up in a tropical North Queensland, so a very sort of quiet area and very much in the forest. And that was my first memory. And that sort of, I think you think about it and you go, well, what sort of clues does that give me about who I am and what I desire? And to me, it was, being with a group of people going on an adventure. And that's still a part of me. I still love being with people and I still love adventuring. I just love getting out there and experiencing new things. Hence why I live in Japan now. And for you, that might mean, that connection, that celebration. You like celebrations, or I heard you, hands in cake. You probably have a passion for cooking delicious treats, and these leave us clues as to where we could be, spending our time in life, because that's what lights us up. That's what makes us feel good. And I don't know what life is. I don't know what reality is, but I know it's an experience because I can feel this experience. And it's how I feel. So what I started to realize is, why do I want to continue drudging through life on a path that isn't really great? I mean, again, I had everything to be grateful for, but I had so much suffering within that was just all self-created. And it's because I wasn't following that why. And I think, as I said, I've got a passion for cooking. So now I'm looking for ways, I've dreamt about opening restaurants and stuff like that. And I know there's hard work and certain, downsides to having a restaurant, but I'm looking for ways to bring that passion to life so I can continue cooking for people. And I don't really want to cook in a restaurant setting. So I'm thinking about ways how I can use that passion as well. But doing more of those things that I love. And certainly, as I said, our childhood will give us clues to those things.
That's great. Now, is there a balance between being obsessed with your why and evolving, as you mentioned earlier? Our whys can evolve over time.
A balance? Do you mean a balance to living our why, or between the world that exists currently for us and then trying to bring that why into life? Or
Yeah, because I think from what I'm seeing and reflecting on, it's kind of like when you're in your 20s, everything's about money, right? And maybe a little bit of lifestyle, which your money leads to lifestyle. But when you get in your 30s, you're probably settling down. You're married. You may have your first child. It's about family.
yeah.
So even with that involvement over time, do you remain obsessed? And is that obsession of your why sustainable?
I think you've got to be obsessed with your why, because that's life. I read a quote yesterday, or it might have been a phrase, but I asked the question, what's my purpose? What's the purpose of life? And one of these quotes said, it's a silly question because the purpose of life is life. And that's pretty true. Like, I mean, that's life, yeah. And if you're not really excited about your life, then you're probably not going to really be living it. And that's what our why does. It helps us really create that excitement and passion towards life and everything within it. It really does make everything more beautiful, even those things that you still might have to do that you don't like. And I mean, I reflect on slowly as I started to define my why and started to bring some of my passions into my life and start, following some dreams in this bits and pieces. Because I couldn't do it straight away. I still had to work my job to provide for the family and pay off the mortgages and debt that we had. But I started just doing things slowly, and it was amazing how much that, little bit of implementation sort of infected the rest of my life. It started to change my attitude, the way I showed up to my work, which I wasn't really happy with at the time. And it just enhanced my happiness because I started doing things that I enjoyed. And gradually and surely enough, it just got bigger and bigger until the point where I left all that, and now I just do, the Hidden Why project full time. This is my passion. I love to write. I love to speak with people and help others, and it's sort of a gradual thing. But yeah, I think we need to We need to be mindful that, there might have to be a little bit of a balance to our why. You might not be able to jump the gun and chase your dreams straight away. I think there is certainly a driving motivator for, people out of the door at 20s for money. However, I don't know if that's the necessarily the way. I've had some interviews with young people, and one in particular recently I had an interview with. He was a guy that said, he didn't want to follow that path straight out of school, and he started doing his own thing. And then I thought, well, that's a really good example of someone that can follow their why from get-go. As far as, each of us individually, we're all different, and the path we follow will be different. That deep sense of happiness and how we get there will be different. But there's certain timeless principles that we can work within to help us get there. And, for me, settling down, we get to that point. I finished travel. I finished university, and I traveled the world for 3.5 years, 4 years, went back home, and I thought, okay, well, maybe it's time to settle down, because, that's what we're always told. You need to settle down, get a wife, and all that stuff. And it's a ridiculous term created to make us sort of conform in society. I've never been one to settle. I can't sit still. So why was settling down an option for me? But I thought that's what I had to do. And that's a critical mistake. You don't have to settle down, you don't have to accept the way things are just because that's what everyone else does. You can do your own thing. And, again, having that awareness of your why will help you define what that thing is. I think we have to continually check into our why. I'm continually going back to mine and going, well, is this still real for me? Is this changing? What's going on here? I recently went away for 2 weeks with my family here in Japan on holiday, and had lots of time to reflect, which was great. And I started questioning, well, what am I doing? What path am I going on in 2017? What did I do last year that was good? And what did I do that was causing me my suffering? So what can I therefore remove in 2017? So I started questioning my why and bits and pieces of it to realign me and put me on, track. And things might change this year again for me, but that's okay, because I think continual change is continual growth, and that helps me progress on my journey in life. And that's what makes me happy. But again, we're all different. Some people might not like the change that I like as rapidly as I do. Some people might like that longer term sort of security, and that's fine as long as it's connecting you with your why.
So I love your self-awareness, and that's something that I'm big on. I believe self-awareness starts with a self-assessment. And like you said, is this still real to me? You start questioning yourself on all these things. However, I don't think everyone is self-aware. Do you believe people ignore those thoughts and feelings and tough questions in their head, and they only address it when they're confronted, by a person, a friend, relationship? What are some ways that lead to self-awareness?
Yeah, good question. I don't know if people are self-aware or not, or how, if people avoid, becoming more self-aware, or that avoid those bigger questions. So I'm not too sure about that. I would think that most people would have these questions at some points in their life. But often we're just, in this day and age at least, we're so overwhelmed by everything. Everything that we have to do, all the tasks and bits and pieces that are going on, emails, social media, there's just so much coming at us fast and thick. And where do you get time to really become aware? You don't get that time. So that's critical mistake number one. And the other thing is, we have so many opportunities. And I was talking about this with a friend the other day. Back in the 50 years ago, we didn't have this connectivity that we had. We were brought up in a little area. We had a little community. And that's as far as our, sort of mind could span. We had international travel, but it wasn't as common. Whereas now, we can talk to someone on the other side of the world at any time of the day. We can travel anywhere pretty easily. It's quite affordable. There's just so many opportunities, and that creates a lot of confusion in life as well. Certainly, I've experienced that confusion. So there's a couple of factors that, I guess, put us away from that self-awareness. But I think the first practice is, and I think we can all develop self-awareness, is to just take that time out. You're absolutely right that sometimes it's a life crisis, a moment that changes something, and you have that moment to reflect. Certainly for me, I remember I was fired for one of my jobs And that gave me some time to really reflect on things. And it was in those moments I said, well, what am I doing? What do I really want to be doing? So certainly there's some of those moments that come about. But if you really want to become more self-aware, you need to take the time to work on awareness and mindfulness practice. I believe awareness is the key. I think we should be spending much more time on awareness than we are currently, and I would say almost half of the time that we spend on our work, we need to spend the same amount of time in awareness. And that might seem incomprehensible to some people because they're so busy. I get that. But it is just the absolute most powerful thing that I've done in my life. And if I look at a roadmap, the ultimate life map that I call it, if you're driving to a destination and you had a map but you had no lights, that's what it's like without having awareness in life. You can't see where you're going. Awareness gives you that clarity. Not only does it give you clarity around your why and your life compass to better navigate you, but it'll allow you to see all the things that you're doing, your actions, your behaviors, and say, hey, well, is this really what I should be doing or is this not? And certainly for me, awareness helps you, I don't know, it brings a sense of wisdom with it. Like you just start seeing the things clearer and you can start going, well, that's not necessary. That's not really bringing me deeper happiness. And man, I'll tell you what, I think we need to simplify our lives going back and taking some of the stuff out of it. I'm just listening to a good book called Essential by the Minimalists, guys. Fantastic book about, minimalization or simplification. And certainly there's so much power in that. And I think a lot of that comes through awareness. And, the Stoics, I'm a bit of a Stoicism fan and listen to a lot of that work as well. And certainly that's a big part of their life. And it just grounds you. It sort of brings you down to what life's really all about. And it starts removing, it's good to have ambitions, but sometimes ambition can cloud the now, can cloud the present. And it takes us away from truly living this life because we're always in the chase. Just as, our past we can attach ourselves to the past too heavily, and that slows us down and limits us from progression as well. So awareness really brings us back to the moment, back to what it's all about. And I think, it's an important practice to get into. If I was to suggest anyone that wants to bring it into practice, the simplest thing I was advised and the best thing that worked for me was just to take 10 minutes out of your day in the morning. For me, it works, it could be at night, whenever, and just remove yourself from whatever environment, all the clutter and noise that might exist around you, and just sit there and close your eyes and focus on your breath. That's the simplest sort of meditation I can think of. There's apps out there. There's Headspace. That's a great app to use that can help you with these processes. But I just started because I didn't have a budget at the time for it, or maybe I didn't want to, I don't know. But I just started sitting there in my office in the morning after I did my workout and my writing, and then I just turn everything off and sit on the floor cross-legged. I've developed this over the years, but I just sit down and just try and tune out for 15 minutes. And Tim Ferriss, he always says, if you don't have 10 minutes to meditate, then you probably need to do more. And that's pretty true. I think if you think you don't have time to spend 10 minutes sitting down, then that's a greater reason for you to actually do this practice. Beyond that, the best sort of meditation for me is just going outside, going outdoors and removing yourself from your environment, because our environments become sometimes so toxic to our clarity and our awareness. It can sort of clutter things up. So just taking yourself outside, like going for a jog or a walk. Last year I went for walks in the morning, and it was just a great time to clear the mind and think about things. You get to, go through critical thinking, but it also creates that sense of awareness as well. So do something like that, go for a hike, just change your environment, get out in nature. It's a really good way to disconnect and reconnect within. That's sort of a practice as well.
Yeah, I love my walking meditations. Is happiness a state of being, or is it more than that?
Good question. I don't know. I think it's a state of being. I think it's a deep state of being. And it's amazing what my thoughts that I've got these days compared to 10 years ago about, happiness and life. But I really believe that there is a deeper sense of happiness. And I used to read that, no, happiness isn't possible. No, you're going to have some crap days where things are shit and all that sort of stuff. And I get that, but I think it's because we've got a false sense of this term happiness. We don't really understand what it means. We've sort of, society's created this surface level, superficial happiness, and we associate that with, going to a party on the weekend or having friends around or doing those things that bring us momentary sort of insights to happiness, I guess. And those things are really a creation of society because we're so suffering in our lives, because we're not loving our life and what we're doing with our life. We have to find these pleasures, these pacifiers to heal. And they're, going shopping, drinking, watching TV, overeating, or, whatever it might be. There's some good ones as well. Like I think, going for a surf or going for a jog, there's good things to help us release that sense of suffering. But all these things aren't really, really deep happiness. I think they're just surface level, and they can come and go just as quickly as either. So I think to find that deep sense of happiness, you really need to be connected with your why, and that's where this awareness comes from, and that's what will bring you there.
Yeah, I liked your blog post on happiness runs in a circle of motion, and I'm going to link that up as well. And I guess it's the same thing, but it's like, yes, I'm happy overall, but yes, I'm going to have these things stress me out. I may have this bad day, but that's just a very minute thing on the greater scale. And for me, I understand that for myself, but oftentimes when I look at other people, I think they just lump all of that together as to one emotion. Like if you because you had a bad experience within the 24 hours, if you had one bad thing, you just had a bad day. But I'm realizing it's hard to convince people otherwise.
Well, this is where awareness, an awareness practice helps. And certainly it's just made me more grounded over the years. Things used to stress me out. Like, you imagine dropping your mobile phone and cracking your screen. Okay. People hate doing that, man. And I did it once a few years ago, and it stressed the hell out of me and really made my day bad. And I did it recently here in Japan and cracked it really good. And I picked it up and looked at it. I smiled and went back inside and said, hey, I just dropped my phone. Look at it. And it was just a different attitude towards those things that, and again, it's all self-caused suffering. We cause our own suffering in life, and it's how we view these things. And honestly, man, my phone, it doesn't matter if I have a phone or not. Not going to change the way I live this life and my level of happiness. That phone and that moment, it just is irrelevant to the grand scheme of things. I mean, you go outside and look up at the sky and look at the star Sirius and just be marveled about how big it is and how small we are. You dropping your phone and cracking your screen, it means absolutely nothing. So to get yourself wound up and upset, and again, it takes practice to not let those things get to you. But that's what it's about. Like, you're really just simplifying your life and really getting understanding about what's really, why does this cause me unhappiness? And it's likely to be because it's just the wrong perception of the situation that's causing it, and it's self-caused.
All right, so I want to pivot a little bit. You have an upcoming book, Delegate to Freedom, about hiring and outsourcing work processes.
Yeah.
At what point in your business did you realize you needed to outsource, delegate, and create systems in your business?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? After the conversation we just had to go to Delegate to Freedom, my book about outsourcing your work. And it is sort of a disconnect, but I was in real estate for a period there. And when I got into real estate, I realized that if I wanted to make really good connections, and real estate's all about connections, and I know you're big on, networking and all that. If I wanted to, really be able to connect with people, then I need to get rid of a lot of that admin sort of tasks that chewed up a lot of my time. And I came across virtual assistants, and I had a Filipino worker at that time. And it was great. I got to outsource a lot of my tasks, the mundane tasks that I didn't enjoy, tasks that, she did better than me anyway, and tasks that just chewed up my time. so that gave me time back to really connect with people. So that's where it all started. And then I actually thought, hey, this is a great idea. Might as well, make this into a bit of a business. And that's what I did. We've got now global outsource assistance.com. And we help other real estate agents and entrepreneurs, business people, set themselves up with virtual assistants so they can do the same. So that's where it started from. And once I started that business, actually, this book wasn't supposed to be a book. I was just going to write a short ebook about, hiring virtual assistants. And then it turned, I love writing. So it turned into 50,000 words suddenly. Since has been reduced by my editor dramatically. So it's a 117-page read. It's quite an easy read, which is all about time effectiveness anyway. So that makes sense. And yeah, that's when I realized that the virtual assistants are beneficial to getting you to do, more of what you love and still being able to have those things you want to tick off. So as an entrepreneur with the hidden why, there's so many things that you've got, you think about your website, uploading things, editing, there's so many things you could have outsourced. It's just never ending. It's just you have to sort of decide on what's most important for you. And for me, I outsource a lot of my work. I get my website. That's all done by virtual assistants. I get posts uploaded. I get my podcast managed. So there's just a bunch of different assets that they help me with that allows me just to do the things that I enjoy more as well. So that's, I like to write. I like to create. So that gives me more time to do that sort of stuff. Again, for connections and networking. Freeing up your time doing some of that admin sort of work will help you do that. So, yeah, there's great benefits for your audience, I'm sure, listening out there to do it. And I hope that answers your question in a long sort of form.
Yeah. So what are maybe 2 to 3 questions or popular questions that the entrepreneur can ask when they're looking for a virtual assistant?
Yeah, I think first they probably have to ask themselves the questions. Well, why am I looking for a virtual assistant? What's the ultimate goal that I want to achieve by hiring a virtual assistant? And then having a look at, well, what tasks would I have them do? And then I'd work on, looking at your schedule and saying, well, these are all the things that take up majority of my time. I'd look at a time basis first and say, well, this is the one that takes up most of my time and the one that's most important. So that's the first task that I'm going to get to do. So I think you need to ask yourself why first, and certainly that'll give you an assessment whether it is for you. When you're looking for a virtual assistant, I think you need to ask yourself, what kind of virtual assistant that you're going to hire. And that's based, again, on your task. So that would sort of answer that question. So that might be, is it an administrative assistant? Is it a marketing assistant? Is it someone that helps you with your web development or graphic design work? So just deciding on who you need. And then that'll help you better do your search. And the next thing you probably need to do is look at, well, do I want to find my own virtual assistant and do the search myself? There's platforms out there that do that. Odesk is a big one where you can jump on there and do your search yourself and find it with that task. Or you can go the other option, which is using an agency like ourselves where we connect with the client, find out what their needs are, and then do the work to find them a suitable virtual assistant. So that's the next step you'd want to ask yourself. And again, then the next one would be probably, how much are you willing to invest into a virtual assistant? Obviously, there are benefits of hiring in the Philippines. That's where our guys are based, because the affordability is great. But sometimes too, you might need someone that has a greater, ability, natural language ability, or has a higher skill in a certain area. So that might not be the reason for you. A lot of people start with hiring virtual assistants because it's affordable. So that means they usually go offshore. And certainly that was the reason why I did it, because I couldn't afford $38 an hour for a personal assistant in the office. But for others, it might be a different need, so it really depends on what your particular need is. But there's a few questions that you could start with.
Can you recommend maybe 1 or 2 resources or apps that you think our listeners can benefit from?
Resources or apps? Yes. Headspace, there you go. We talked about awareness today, so have a look at that one. I don't know what the membership is, but it's pretty affordable. And it's one I use as well. So I'd look at that. Also, go to thehiddenwhy.com and download Discover Your Why Life Purpose Questionnaire. That's a good way to start the process off if you want to connect with your why. So there's 2 things that you could have a look at.
Definitely. You have an awesome website, thehiddenwhy.com. So I'll definitely have that in the show notes. How else can the listeners get in touch with you, or what is the best platform that you're on?
Yeah, probably just my website. If you go to thehiddenwhy.com, I'm on Facebook, Twitter. Facebook's probably the best way to connect with me. My email address is online there as well, so you can reach out if you have any questions or want to get in touch. I do offer a consultation session at the moment called a discovery session. So if you're interested to, have a bit of a powwow with me for 30 minutes, we can have a chat and sort of help define your why, if that's what you desire. So you can reach out that way as well.
Well, Leigh, I just want to acknowledge you for your openness, right? Your not even vulnerability, but just being authentic and transparent, because a lot of people shy away from the questions that I ask. So even by going on your website, I learned so much, and I look forward to following you and your success. So thank you for being on the show.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.
And the final question, how do you define success?
How do I define success? Yes, it's a question that constantly comes up. Look, I think we're all successful already, because success is an accomplishment or an outcome. And if you are where you are, that's an accomplishment of what you've done in the past. So you're successful in that. Now, if you're not where you wanted to be, well, it's because you haven't had that awareness around where you wanted to head. So you have to take responsibility for that. But the good news is that the path forward is your choice, and where you go from here will determine your success. And success is whatever you set out to achieve, and then getting there.
I love that. That's very encouraging, because a lot of people think they have to wait to experience a certain moment before they can become successful. But if you're currently working and you're hitting those milestones and accomplishing your goals, you are successful. And we need to acknowledge that a lot more.
Absolutely. Like if you have a plan to get out of bed at 4:30 tomorrow morning, and you get up and you get out of bed at 4:30, hey, you're a success. If you need to go to the toilet and you make it to the toilet and go to the toilet, you're a success. Don't beat yourself up, man. Like seriously, like it's things that we do are amazing, and we're all successes in our own rights. And you have to start somewhere. Start with a little step of success, and suddenly those little things will look insignificant to what you're achieving daily.
I love it. Look, Leigh, once again, thank you for being on the show. Everyone, please make sure to visit thehiddenwhy.com. I will have it in the show notes. Remember, I believe in you, and a personal connection leads to an influential network. Thanks for networking with Michelle.